Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 2, Episode 16, A Penny for Your Thoughts, written by George Clayton Johnson and starring Dick York as Hector Poole and June Dayton as Miss Turner. And let me just say that this is the first Twilight Zone written by George Clayton Johnson. He would go on to write several more Twilight Zones, but this is definitely one of his best. This episode does what all good episodes of Twilight Zone do, in my opinion, which is that it is entertaining and thought-provoking at the same time. So I will get started. We get a unique premise to this episode, which is cool too. We get our main character, Hector, and he's walking down the street to get a newspaper. He pays for the paper by flipping a coin, but the coin doesn't land like a coin normally does. It kind of stands up on its own, and out of this Hector gets a strange power where he can hear other people's thoughts, which is pretty interesting. So we see this in action right away. He almost gets hit by a car, and the man comes out of the car and asks him if he's okay and acts concerned, but really the man is thinking inside about how this will affect him, about how Hector's an idiot, and about how he's really mad about it. So we immediately see the contrast between what someone is thinking and how they are acting, which is very interesting. Then we go to Hector at work, and we're introduced to his boss, Mr. Bagby, and he's on the phone with some lady who's not his wife. We find out he's probably, it's hinted that he's having an affair with her, and Hector can hear his thoughts when he comes in to explain why he was late. And Hector also mentions, some of the things that Bagby's been saying. Bagby's suspicious, but he doesn't think too much of it right now. So then we get Hector walking around, and he's hearing other people's thoughts, a sampling of them, and it looks like he's kind of starting to wonder, this might be kind of interesting to have these powers. Then we're introduced to another scene where there's a man named Mr. Sykes, and he's been approved for a loan for his business, but Hector hears him really talking about how he's in financial trouble and he's going to use the money to bet on a race and try and get all the money back. So when Hector brings this up, of course the man, says he's lying, and Hector gets in trouble for this. He gets yelled at. So then we're introduced to a Miss Turner, and she's the only one that seems to feel bad for Hector and think he deserves better than he's getting. And they chat for a few minutes, and he thanks her for her kind thoughts. And again, she has no idea how he knows what she's been thinking. And there's another man in this scene, and he is thinking, he's acting pleasant on the surface, but he's thinking bad thoughts about Miss Turner. So Hector pours water on his head, and the guy says, we'll settle this later. But she's very pleased about it. Now, all this is set up in the first half of the episode, but it will come back in the second half, most of it. So then we get to a scene where there's an older man, and Hector hears him being fed up, and he's thinking, in his thoughts, they'll all be sorry, and it's implied that he's going to steal money from the bank because he's, an upset employee. And this will be the main crux of what the rest of the episode is about. So we go to the second half of the episode, and we get another scene with Hector and Miss Turner, and he tells her his story about how he can read minds, and he thinks the bank is going to be robbed. She thinks it's just a technique he's using to come on to her, which is somewhat amusing. And then he goes and talks to Mr. Bagby about the old man, that he's planning to rob the bank. Bagby starts to believe him, and they start watching the old man. The old man does everything by coincidence that Hector said he was going to do in the setup. And so when the old man comes out of the safe or vault, whatever it is where he always comes out of, they dump his briefcase out, but there's no money in it, only his personal belongings. So Hector's now in big trouble. He gets fired, but the old man, whose name is Smithers, I believe, asks him how he knew. He says he really did think about robbing the bank, but it's just one of those daydreams that people have. He would never do it. He doesn't have the guts to do it. And this just shows that people think a lot of things that they're never really going to do. This was very clever as well. So Hector wasn't actually wrong. He just misinterpreted it as something that was really going to happen instead of something that was just a man's dream. this is, to me, why we can never get inside someone else's head, because you never know if their thought is a serious thought or a fantasy thought, which is very, very cool. So then we go back to Miss Turner and Hector as he's been fired, and you can tell he's now realizing that this power isn't as great as it initially seemed to be, and he tells her that people are not like you think, which is true. Again, you can never get inside of someone else's shoes, as they say. But then it comes to be, I guess Hector's getting ready to leave, and the boss, Mr. Bagby, tells him, that man was arrested, the man that you said was going to gamble, and he wants to know, how Hector knew about it. And it turns out that, Hector decides, I want a promotion if I'm going to keep working here. And the boss doesn't want to do that, but then he mentions Felicia, which is the girl that he's supposed to meet, and his wife, and he knows all about it. So Mr. Bagby gives in and gives him the promotion, and Mr. Smithers gets a trip to Bermuda out of it as well. So the old man that didn't take the money gets his reward as well. So everything turns out well. Also, Hector asks Miss Turner to leave, so now it looks like they're going to be an item. So this thing ends pretty good for everybody. Even Bagby gets to keep his secret about the other woman with his wife, so I guess it's okay for him. And the episode ends pretty cool as well. Miss Turner and Hector are leaving, and he goes to get a paper from the same stand. The coin is still in the position it was. He buys a new paper, and he throws another coin, and it hits the original coin, knocking it into a normal position, and he loses his power to be able to tell what other people are thinking, and this pleases him a great deal. Now, if there's one slight issue I have with this episode, is that there's so many different things going on as I've described. The resolutions feel a bit rushed, and one of them never gets come back to at all, about the man that would see him later for spilling the water on him. Feels like maybe one less subplot would have helped this episode, but they still fit a lot into 25 minutes, and it's a very entertaining and thought-provoking episode. It makes you wonder, would it really be good to know what other people are thinking? Is that something you'd really want to happen? And that's something you can discuss, and I like episodes that have, some thought behind them. So overall, this is an excellent episode that I give 4 out of 5. So 4 out of 5 for a penny for your thoughts. Definitely watch this one. Thanks.